Hello lovely people! Today, as the title of the video would suggest, I'm doing a book unhaul. I never thought about doing a book unhaul video until I watched Nicola Golding's video, which I will link here for you to go watch, and it was weirdly interesting, which seems really silly because when I watch book videos to like get book recommendations, and it seems like the opposite of that, but it was weirdly interesting, so I'm gonna do one.
Sophie Vlogs.
First up is The Kiss of Death by Marcus Sedgwick. I will say, I did enjoy this book. It was good. Marcus Sedgwick is an author who I read a lot of when I was a teenager. This is the sequel to My Sword Hand is Singing, which was an excellent book, and I've lost my copy of it somewhere, which means I can't reread it, which is a real shame because I remember really enjoying it. But this is the sequel. It also happens to be signed, but I have no memory of this, so I think this must have been signed before I bought it, because no idea at all. It's all set in Venice, which I really liked because I went on holiday to Venice a couple of years ago, and I spent about 10 days there, which means I got to know the place fairly well, so it was very easy for me to imagine all the stuff happening because I'm quite familiar with like the feel of Venice, and I really liked that. It was a solid book. I think the problem was that My Sword Hand is Singing is such a good book that it didn't entirely feel like it needed a sequel, to be honest. Like, as a standalone book it would have been perfectly fine, but it just didn't feel super necessary. But it was fine, and if you like Marcus Sedgwick, you'll like this book because it's a solid good read. I just don't think it's necessary to take up valuable book space. So I'm going to give it to a charity shop and someone else can experience it. Next we have Here Bullet by Brian Turner. I bought this when I was applying to universities because I was trying to expand my knowledge of things that weren't just fiction books. So I was trying to read more poetry and more plays so that if I had interviews and I had to talk about what poetries and plays I liked, I would be able to do that. And I wanted to go for something a little bit different that wasn't entirely mainstream, and we did Here Bullet, the poem, in my English class like a couple of years before that. So I thought, I'll get the poetry book, I'll read the poetry book, if I have to talk about poetry, I'll talk about Brian Turner, and then they'll be like, ooh, she's interesting, she's different. I just never reread it, and when I want to read poetry, I never want to read this poetry. Next up is The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. I think it's referred to as like a family saga, because it spans like 4 generations of this family or something. It's a little bit like magical realism-y, kind of. Or at least, like, the rules of our reality are not always entirely followed. Which is kind of why I wanted to check it out, to be honest, because I find magical realism very interesting. There were sections of this book that I found really gripped me, and it has actually stayed with me, and I did think about it quite a lot after I read it, but I'm never going to reread it, and there were bits of it which I also had to, like, push my way through a little bit, because I wasn't loving. I really do understand why people like it and why it's talked about, and I did think it was very, like, objectively good, but I didn't really like have a super connection with it, so again, gonna pass it on so someone else can. Also heading to a charity shop is Venora Bennett's Portrait of an Unknown Woman. It's a historical fiction book that is all based around Thomas More and Hans Holbein's paintings and all that sort of thing, which is why I bought it. I like historical fiction. There is a lot of historical fiction set in the Tudor times, specifically Henry VIII, that sort of time. Understandably, it's a very interesting time of our history, but it does mean that I have read quite a lot of books set in that time. I decided to pick this one up anyway, because I liked the fact it was going to explore Hans Holbein? How do you say that word? Tell me in the comments below. And I did really like that element. I thought it was an interesting, slightly different take on a period of history that has been written about quite a lot. The main character is one of Thomas More's adopted daughters. It follows her and her relationship with the painter and her relationship with other people and that sort of thing. And it was thoroughly enjoyable, actually. The only reason I'm getting rid of it is, again, not going to reread it. Wasn't the best historical book I've ever read, but better than I was expecting it to be. So if you do like historical fiction, specifically Tudor historical fiction, and you'd like something that is a slightly different take, then check this out, it was good. Next up is The Passion of New Eve by Angela Carter. I really loved Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, which is retellings of fairy tales. I thought it was brilliant, and I really, really enjoyed it, which is why I wanted to pick this up so that I could try reading a full-length book by her. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I really got this. Like, it wasn't bad by any means, but I just feel like I didn't get it. Like, I really like books that explore gender and sexuality and have like a feminist approach to things, but I just don't think I really connected with this. As I was reading it, I understand why people do like it, like I can objectively see that, but I just couldn't really connect with it. It left me just feeling a bit like, meh. I sort of felt slightly disappointed that I didn't love this, but at the same time I just didn't. Maybe one day I'll reread it and it will like click in my brain and I'll suddenly get it and I'll be like, oh my god, this book. But for now, don't really get it. If you do really like this book, please do let me know in the comments below the reasons why and that sort of thing, because I didn't not like it. I just didn't get it, I don't think. I don't know, I feel like I'm missing something. But regardless, I'm not really going to reread it anytime soon, so someone else can read it, love it, own it. Next up is something that I do really like, which is A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams, and the only reason I'm getting rid of this is because I actually have 2 copies, because I liked it a lot. I studied A Streetcar Named Desire at A-level, and when it came to applying to unis, again, the playwright that I chose to get to know was Tennessee Williams, which means that I have like an anthology. Is it an anthology when it's plays? I have a book that has a couple of his plays in, because Tennessee Williams was my guy who I was like, if anyone asks me about drama, I'm gonna talk about Tennessee Williams. I really like this play, I really like Tennessee Williams, I think he's great and just great, really. He's good, he's a good egg. But I don't need 2 copies of him, so this one's gonna go to a charity shop. The final book I'm giving away is one that I'm not 100% sure that I am gonna give away yet, but I probably am, and that's The Waves by Virginia Woolf, which I mentioned in a previous video, because All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven references this quite a lot, which is why I bought it, because I really wanted to experience it and read it in its whole. I am really glad I read this, and I did enjoy reading it, but it was a little bit of a slog at times, just because of the narration style. I found it a little bit hard to engage. It's written in a very interesting way. It's kind of a little bit stream of consciousness-ish. It flips between this group of friends who grew up together, and the narrative flips between their perspectives. It doesn't really tell you when it's flipping. It just sort of, pages will be from one person's point of view and then it'll change to someone else, and you kind of pick it up just by their tone and by the individual personality of the person and reading and that sort of thing, which was interesting, but I just found it a little bit hard to just sit and read it. As I was reading it, I was aware of how it was like objectively very good, and I did enjoy parts of it again, but it just couldn't really sit and read, and I just want to sit and read sometimes. It was kind of less like a book and more like a really long poem, almost. That's why I'm hesitant to get rid of it, because I feel like maybe I should reread it and then I might get it more, but I don't think that's going to happen, so I'm going to give it away. Someone else can read it, own it, love it. So this was my little book unhaul. If you've read any of these and you disagree with my opinions on them, I would really be interested to know why. That would be great. We can have like a discussion about it. That would be really cool. Or if you've read any of these and you would totally agree with my decision, also let me know, because validation is great. I hope you're having a super fabulous day, and yeah, see you next week.